Today, we are diving into what is essentially a psychological drama pulled straight from an ancient text. It's a story that unfolds in the dark confines of a prison where you've got two men whose entire futures hinge on the meaning of a dream, and a third man who somehow holds the key to it all. So get this for setup. You have two prisoners who have these incredibly vivid and weirdly similar dreams on the very same night. The interpretation for one of them means he's about to walk free, but for the other guy, it's a death warrant. The real mystery is, how do you figure out which is which? I mean, the stakes literally could not be higher. So who exactly are these two men? Well, they're not your average criminals, not by a long shot. We're talking about two very high-ranking officials from the court of the Egyptian Pharaoh himself, the most powerful man on the planet at the time. So how on earth did they end up in a dungeon? Okay, so our first guy is the chief butler. Think about that role. This is the person who personally serves Pharaoh his wine. It's a position of incredible trust. But something happened. He offended the king. And just like that, that trust was shattered. And prisoner number two is the chief baker. He was in charge of every single thing that came out of the royal ovens. He also somehow made Pharaoh angry. Now, the text doesn't tell us what they did, but whatever it was, the consequences were immediate. The original text uses this fantastic old word, wrath, to describe Pharaoh's reaction. It basically means he was absolutely furious. And in this rage, he had them both tossed into the state prison. In an instant, they went from positions of power to prisoners in a cell. But here's the thing, they weren't the only ones in there. They find themselves sharing a cell with a young Hebrew man named Joseph. And in a really strange twist, the warden had actually put Joseph in charge of looking after these two new, very important prisoners. So one morning, Joseph goes to check on the butler and the baker, and he finds them looking completely downcast, just sad. He asks them what's wrong, and they tell him they both had these intense dreams last night, but they have no clue what they mean. And you have to understand, in their world, a dream you couldn't interpret was a really bad omen. It was deeply unsettling. All right, let's break down what they saw. The butler dreams about a vine with 3 branches. He watches it bud, blossom, and grow ripe grapes. And then, in the dream, he's doing his old job again, squeezing those grapes into Pharaoh's cup and handing it to him. Now look at the baker's dream. It starts off kind of similar. He sees 3 white baskets on his head, full of all sorts of baked goods for the king. But here's where it takes a dark turn. Birds just swoop down and start eating the food right out of the baskets on his head. See the difference? One is active and successful, the other is passive and ends in loss. So Joseph sees how upset they are, and this is where he steps up. They just see a confusing, scary mess. But he sees something else entirely. He sees a message. And he says this with just incredible confidence. Notice he doesn't take the credit for himself. He says, basically, God is the one who interprets dreams, so go ahead, tell me. It's a seriously bold thing for a prisoner to say. And here are the prophecies, laid out plain and simple. To the butler, Joseph says the 3 branches mean 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and give you your job back. You're saved. But for the baker, those 3 baskets also mean 3 days, but with a horrifying twist. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from off you and have you executed. Chilling, right? So after giving the butler this amazing news, Joseph makes just one simple request. He says, hey, when you're out, when things are good for you again, please just remember me. Mention me to Pharaoh. Get me out of here. He explains that he's completely innocent and was thrown in prison for no reason. That's all he asks. Okay, so you've got 2 men with 2 prophecies, one of total restoration, one of utter doom. And now the clock is ticking. The 3rd day is here. This is it, the moment of truth. Can you just imagine the tension of those 3 days? The first day, you get the news. The second day, you just wait. And then the 3rd day finally arrives, and it happens to be Pharaoh's birthday. This was a day for huge feasts, but also a day when kings would hand out both pardons and punishments. The fates of both men were about to be sealed. And wouldn't you know it, just as Joseph said, Pharaoh remembers his chief butler. He calls for him, lifts him up out of prison, and restores him to his old job. The butler is right back where he was, serving wine to the king. The dream came true, down to the letter. But then, so did the other dream.
Joseph's other prophecy also comes true with terrifying accuracy. Pharaoh condemns the chief baker, who is taken from the prison and hanged. Joseph was right about everything. So there you have it. The prophecies came true. The dream interpreter was right. And the guy who was saved totally owes Joseph his freedom, right? Well, the story's not quite over. There's one final, gut-wrenching twist.
And here it is, the final crushing line of the whole story. Despite everything Joseph did, despite owing him his life, the chief butler, now back in his comfortable, safe position, simply forgot. He didn't have to say a bad word about Joseph. He just had to say nothing. He betrayed him with silence.
And that really leaves us with this question that feels just as relevant today as it was back then. Think about it. Joseph was thrown into prison because of his enemy's hatred, sure, but he was kept there because of the forgetfulness of someone who should have been his friend. It's a powerful thought to end on, that sometimes the deepest cut doesn't come from an enemy's attack, but from the simple indifference of someone you helped.